welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Please feel free to use the chat to say hello and from which part of the world are you coming. And we will start this awesome Tableau analytic user group because we have a very good speaker today. So what makes this Tableau user unique? This Tableau user group is a little bit unique because it's really dedicated to learning everything about Tableau, Tableau desktop, how to do things in Tableau, how to, it's analytic all the time. So if you don't want to miss any of our speech, you can obviously register with this QR code. You will also see all the session, the past session in YouTube. I will be sharing the link in the chat later, so you will be able to watch any of them. And obviously, I am not alone on this Tableau Analytic user group. We have 3 awesome leaders, we're including myself. It's very early for me in the morning, so I'm just bragging about me. That's fantastic. We have Sedal, who is our US counterpart. We have for the first time ever some Batchelor here from the APAC part. Yay. So our idea is really, some. And the idea here is really to be able to propose the audience from all over the world. So we will have session as today that is more user friendly for Europe and APAC. Next time in December, we will have a Europe US session, and in January, most probably a US APAC session. So we will change hours to accommodate more your needs. But don't worry, this session is being recorded and it will be later on YouTube. Let me introduce Sedal, even if it's not here physically present with us today. So Sedal is a Tableau desktop specialist, a Tableau feature author, a community equity task force leader. He's very passionate about using data and chatting with the community, and he likes wine like me. Then, myself, I am leading the Tableau Center of Enablement for Swiss Bank, and I love Tableau, my dog, and chocolate. And then, last but not least, Samantha Batchelor is a BI solution, a data visualization lead at Origin Energy. And she develops a workbook and manages a server for 800 users. She's very passionate about supporting people in their data journey and has delivered Tableau training across Australia. And I really like a Tableau public profile. So if you haven't had a look, you should definitely. It's very colorful, and I don't know, I think that she likes video games.
A little,
which is cool. So here is the ground rule for today. You have a chat session. So here you can use it to say hello, where you are coming from and everything, and we will communicate with you. But if you have a question for our speaker, please use the Q&A box because it's easier for us to monitor. And the only rule here is enjoy. And also maybe send us some love in social media by hashtagging analytic tags. So now, please, Samantha, the mic is yours. Let's introduce our awesome speaker that we have today.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. So hi, everybody. I'm Sam Batchelor. I'm based in Brisbane, Australia, and I work for Origin Energy. And it's my first time co-leading or co-hosting this Tableau user group. So hopefully it goes well and I get the slides right. So we've got 3 fantastic speakers today. We've got Wendy, Fred, and Mark. Wendy's going to take you through making neighborhood level maps using Google My Maps, which I'm really interested in. And then Fred will take us on a journey on how to radial, which sounds like a very, very circular journey. And then we will go to Mark. He will take us through the Z layer, or Z layer, depending on where you are from, appreciating order of priority. So we will stop for 1 or 2 questions after each of the speakers. And again, as Annabelle said, put them in the Q&A. And we will pick up a couple. And then if we have time at the end, we'll have a bit more Q&A. So with that, I'd like to introduce Wendy. I thought Wendy, I guess she was living in Shanghai, but I think she's from Shanghai in China. But I just found out she's living in Wellington, New Zealand, which is amazing. So New Zealand is my homeland, even though I live in Australia now. So that's really cool. So that makes sense why she's got all of the Middle Earth and New Zealand visitors in her Tableau public profile, which I checked out, and oh my goodness, I couldn't believe that it says that she started to use Tableau at the end of 2018, because it's only not that many years, and her Tableau public profile is prolific and exceedingly high quality. So it's amazing. So Wendy is actually a Tableau public ambassador and Tableau Zen Master. Great creds. And also I noticed, I was reading about the Iron Biz that's coming up in the Tableau conference 2021 next week. And one of the finalists, Lisa Trescott, actually picked out Wendy's Escher viz as one of her inspirations or favorite vizzes of all time, which I thought was that's pretty high praise, let's be honest. So congratulations on that, Wendy. I feel like it's an award in itself. So yeah, just handing over to you, Wendy, for the Google My Maps presentation.
Okay, so let me share my screen first. And I'm sharing my keynotes. Can you see that? Okay, cool. So let's start. First, thanks, Annabelle, and thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. Today's topic was making neighborhood level custom maps in Tableau with Google My Maps. I came across Google My Maps for the first time a couple of days before Annabelle invited me to this meetup. And at that time, I found it's a very handy tool to make small scale maps. And I use it to prepare spatial data for Tableau. And in some cases, I don't even need to use my regular map tools such as QGIS. So I picked this topic because I felt it would be very useful for everyone here. However, after playing with it for a couple of weeks, I realized that it's not limited to neighborhood level. So it basically could make any map. So I need to change the topic to making custom maps in Tableau with Google My Maps. And I'm going to talk about the essence of this map today. This is the map of boba tea shops in Singapore. And I made this map last Monday. And it is my submission of the 30-day map challenge. So to make this map, I collected most of the data from Google My Maps and exported into Tableau. I also downloaded region boundaries, like these boundaries, and also the rail lines and rail stations from Singapore official open data source. And then combine these data sets in Tableau and finally put them together into an interactive dashboard. So it could sort and filter and highlight different shops. And throughout this process, in terms of spatial data and map, I didn't use any other tool like QGIS or Mapbox. I purely use Google My Maps and Tableau. And we are going to talk about the essence of that today. But before we dive into Google My Maps, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what is Google My Maps and why I chose to use it. Google My Maps is a service through Google Maps that lets you to attach information to locations and create custom maps. So what intrigued me most is create custom maps. And during my research, the most common use case is making personal travel plans, which makes sense that personal travel plan needs custom maps. So I guess you might think that Google Maps also allows me to save locations and save routes, and it also allows me to share a map with others. So what do they have in common and what's the difference? And let's start with what's the difference first. Firstly, the URL is different. Google My Maps begins with mymaps.google.com, and also a little bit difference in the interface. The left one, I guess most of you are familiar with, but the right one is Google My Maps. It has different panels and different tools, and we are going to take a close look in a second. And next, what do they have in common? There are a lot of features, such as it's free, no programming required, both are cloud-based, and both support keyword search. It's just like using Google search a keyword for point of interest, such as restaurants, buildings, or toilet, etc. And both support custom locations and routes. So locations and routes are the names we are using every day, but in the geometry map, it's called points and lines. And besides that, Google My Maps also supports custom shapes or polygon in Tableau. And I guess shapes or polygons are not very useful for a general map user, because if they need to show a location on a map, even no matter what the size is, they can just use a point or a pin, because they know there is no need to show the outline because the outline is in the base map. However, for us, we Tableau users, sometimes we need to analyze or visualize the size or shape of an area. So in those cases, we need the outline of that area. And in the latest version of Tableau, we have that area calculation. So with Google My Maps, we could prepare such spatial data. And of course, after all of these collecting and preparing, we need to export the data, export the spatial files. And I'm going to show you later how I do it. Last but not least, Google My Maps also not only support sharing, but also collaborating. And nowadays, since I work mostly remotely, and co-editing is a very important feature for me. All right, that's a background knowledge, and let's start now. Today, we are going to draw points, lines, and shapes in Google My Maps. Okay. So to use Google My Maps, you need a Google account. And after sign up and sign in, this is the interface you will see without these three maps. And the good part is this is kind of a Tableau public. Yeah, this is a public platform. So I can have my private maps, and also I can collect other people's maps. And I will start from create a new map. And the default map will be centered at where I am now, and I'm in Wellington. Um, okay, so let's start from the panel on the left. This panel is the panel for layers, to manage layers. And at the top is the name of the map. If I click it, I can rename it to a name I like. And if I need a description, I can add it here. And underneath, there are three actions. The first one is add layer. Here is the list of layers I have. And by default, there is a untitled layer. And the second untitled layer is what I just added. I hide it for now. And this share, the second button is share. It's just like share any files on Google Drive. Add the email and assign that person as viewer or editor, then send the link. You are going to collaborate on this map. And the third one, preview, I'm not going to show it. That's basically what other people will see from the map you shared. And then under that is the list of layers. So same as the title, I can rename it, and I'm going to rename it as shops. And this import, since I will not cover it today, but I have tested, and it's very useful. And if you are interested, click that learn more to learn how to organize that file and then import it. Okay, so at the bottom of this panel, there is a base map. Click that, you can see different styles. And some are similar to Google Maps and some are special. And this one is, I like it. I like to use it. Yeah, I will show you in a second the reason. Okay, move on to the search bar. This is just a regular search bar. And since we are going to visualize the shops in Singapore, I search for Singapore. And immediately the map navigates to Singapore, and we can see a light green pin here. It looks nice beyond a pink background. Okay, and under the search bar, we have undo, redo, and a couple of other options. Today, we are going to focus on add marker or draw a line. Actually, after click draw a line, it says add line or shape. So these two features are very close. They are they are using the same button. Okay, so let's start with a search, a keyword search, and I will just search boba tea to make use of the powerful search engine of Google. Boba tea Singapore would be better. It seems I only have one. How about search bubble tea? I think I need to add Singapore, otherwise it will. Okay, here it goes. So the search engine gives me lots of options. These options are visualized in the both on the map and in the list on the left. Let's click one to see what we have. So for one location, for any of these, we have the name of the shop, details from Google Maps, including address and the ratings and some links. Also at the bottom, there is add to map. if I click that, this one, Best Bubble Tea, will be added to Best Bubble Tea here, add to the shop layer I just created. And after click that Add button, we can see there are some other informations and buttons, such as latitude and longitude. Also, there are options to change color or edit the name and the description. Also, other options, and the last one is delete feature. And if you are not sure about this shop, is it really a bubble tea? The very handy helper is to use this or URL link and click on that to double check. But for the demo today, let's assume all of these are bubble tea shops and add them to my list. Okay, so it seems we have all these places adding to the list. And what if I want to add some other shops? Maybe I have a bubble tea shop and I name it bubble tea, and that's my favorite shop. Okay, you can see that I add another pin and it appears in my list as well. And that's very simple to add points into the map. Okay, so how about lines and shape? To add a line, that's very simple too. I just click on the button and quickly trace, just roughly trace the street I like for the demonstration. And when I'm done, click enter and there will be a pop-up. So I can rename it to maybe street 1. And here's one thing that we need to keep in mind, that here in Google My Maps, lines and the points could be together in one layer. However, if I export that layer and import it in Tableau, there will be an error because Tableau doesn't support mixed geometry at the moment. So what should I do? I've tested a couple of times and find a solution for you. The solution is to use a separate layer for different geometries. So we have a map, we have a layer of lines. So I name that to line and just drag that street 1 onto this layer, into this layer. And if I add another one, just to do the same thing. So that's street 2 and rename to street 2. Cool. And same thing for shapes or polygons. I just recommend create another one for shape and use the same button, add line or shape. But what's different is after I trace that, I need to hover my crosshair to the first point I made. And after the cursor turned into a hand, I click that. And that will create the first shape for me. So how can I name it? I just name it park. It's not a park, but I just name it like that. Okay, so let's have a look at what's different. I find this very interesting and useful for different type of geometries. We have different information in the corner. So this is a park, this is a polygon. We have area and perimeter. For the area, as I mentioned, Tableau has area calculation now. We don't really need to store this piece of information here. But for this one, if in some cases it is useful, I will just save it in the description. and make use of it later in Tableau. Same thing happens to the street. We have that length here. I know that in Tableau, it's possible to calculate distance, but not easy. The easier solution is to just save it from Google and store it in the data set we are going to export. Okay, so that's the 3 types of geometry we draw here in Google My Maps, and I'm going to export it now. So the option is to export KML or KMZ. I find KMZ works every time, so no need to change it to KML in most cases. And you can export either entire map or a single layer. So either will do, and especially for the first time, I think entire map should work. Okay, so I download it and navigate to Tableau finally. Okay, so connect the data. It's a spatial file. Click on that and find that map KMC. Open it. And we can see on the left, there are 3 tables: lines, shapes, and shapes. These are exact same as the 3 layers we created in the Google My Maps. Okay, so let's play with the shapes first. Double click on that. And in the table, we have 3 columns: name, description, and geometry. So the name column is name and description are those 2 columns we have here. Name and description. And the geometry is just the type of the geometry of this shape, these points. And for now, all of them are points. And this is the description I added earlier. Okay, so let's move to the sheet and double click on the geometry. And immediately, all these shapes are visualized on the map. The automatic type is map. And if I change that to circle, I can make it bigger. I need to add a name into details to add some level of details, and I can change color. So you might have noticed there are some maybe error. Have a look at this one. This is called bubble T. And there's another shape called bubble T. After I change that to circle, that one is gone. And this one called bubble T, and there is only one bubble T shape here. What happened? Let's go back to the data source and have a look here. We have 2 bubble T shapes, and if I don't drag description onto the card, Tableau will aggregate these 2 shapes and make them only one circle on the map. So how to solve this problem? What I usually do is add an extra column to make a unique ID for each shop. So is it possible to do it here? Of course. By clicking on the 3 dots on the layer, the 3rd option is Open Data Table. And if we open it, the table looks very familiar, and click on the triangle to show the drop-down menu. There are some options, including Insert Column. I will just insert column for shop ID. Text is fine, and there is an extra column. And for this demo, I will just quickly add some numbers. And I hope it will work like Excel to add these numbers automatically, but I haven't found a solution yet. Maybe there is one, but for now it's fine. We don't have many shops. And now export again. This time I'm going to export only the shops layer. Okay, and edit shops. What I will do is just drag that. My computer is a little bit slow. Yep. Does it work? Oh, seems my computer is super slow now. So I just describe what will happen. It will still have 3 columns, but it will combine the ID and the description in the description column. And we could use a split to separate those, separate the ID and the description. So maybe it doesn't work. So we could move on to the rest of the demonstration. Oh, I think it's back. Does it work? My Tableau stuck a little bit. May I stop sharing my screen for a moment and then come back in a second?
Yeah, don't worry, Wendy, take your time. That's
Okay.
happened to everyone when we do.
Yeah, why is that? I think maybe I just
We'll just share screen really quickly.
Restart my Tableau.
Let me know when you're back. I'm just going to share a screen really quickly. See if this comes through. I see my screen now.
Yep.
So yes. This is a fantastic viz by Wendy, which is kind of demonstrating the functionality that she's doing at the moment, and really just shows the different lines and points within her trip to Middle Earth. So she's got some really great ones. I love that this functionality, because as a lot of people say, it's really good to sort of put yourself in the viz and make it relevant to yourself, make it interesting. People can learn a little bit about you as opposed to the data just being objective, I guess. So yeah, have a go at this, and I'm fascinated by this functionality that Wendy's showing. I'm trying to scribble along some notes, but I think one of the important parts, it seems, is that it's important to export the different layers, so points versus lines versus polygons, if I'm correct. So yeah, we'll see, but have a look through Wendy's prolific profile, and she's got some really cool things, and I just love the idea of, you could do this with any of your journeys, and yeah, add kind of anything that you wanted to it. It's pretty cool.
I wish I knew that before.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, let's do that.
Cool.
Okay. And my second desktop. Cool, I'm back. Thanks for being patient. And now is the second shop layer I exported, as I said, we still have name, description, and geometry. And difference is the shop ID and the description are combined into this description column. And what I would do is just split it. And Tableau is so smart that it recognizes that unique ID. I just need to rename the column and then make use of it. So, it's still very slow. Back to that demo we had earlier. That shop ID, I drag it onto the card, and we can see that's bubble tea, and another one is somewhere here, maybe. Yeah, and we can immediately see that bubble tea move to the right location. Okay, so that's how to add one extra column or any numbers of columns in Google Mind Maps. And then next, I'm going to talk about how to mix different types of geometries. As I mentioned earlier, there will be an error if we mix them and export them in the same file. But if we just do a relationship in Tableau and select any of these fields, it will create a fake relationship, but that works. I will create another fake relationship for lines and do the same thing, just choose description and a name, even it doesn't make sense at all, but it works. So back to the demo, we have lines, shapes, and shops, and points, 3 tables. All of them have 4 rows. We have description, name, and geometry. So if we drag that geometry to the map, and we can see add a marks layer, that's the map layer feature in Tableau. And we can see those 2 lines we have. And if I drag that name, well, I can show the name of the streets on the map. And the same thing to show, I dragged the wrong one, drag a geometry of the shape, and we are going to see this shape on the map. And I drag the name on it. It says this is a park. So that's the very basics of of drawing different geometries in Google Mind Maps and make them work in the same map. So next I'm going to connect the boba tea maps I prepared earlier. It is a map with 160 shops. I did a couple of times keyword search and collect all these shops. So in Google Mind Maps, let's have a look at the data table. I keep the name column, also that shop ID. And besides that, we have that star. So that star is the rating for each shop. That's details from Google Maps. And I've already have that, I think it's here, double click. And we have those shops on the map. And change it to circle, add shop ID onto details. And the fun part, sorry, not circle, it's shape. The fun part is I have made a lovely icon for each shop. It's a boba. So after change that to a boba, we can see that funny map here. And since we also have the ratings, I drag that ratings to size we are going to see large boba shops are very popular and these small ones are less popular according to Google. Okay, and in the demo, we also have those regions at the back. So these regions I download from Singapore open data source, and to visualize that, and also the color visualize the number of shops inside that region. So to do that, we need to do a space join. And I've already did that. Just add the regions into add another data source, that's the region, and open it, drag that region into this box, and here is the space join. So the essence of space join is to change both parts into a geometry, and also change the operator to intersect. And also I prefer full outer type, because if there are some region, if there is no shops, it will also will still show on the map. Okay, and go back to the map. Since we have already got these regions here, the geometry, we drag it onto the map, and it's here, and it has different names, so drag names onto detail. And oh, I drag a wrong name. That's the name of a shop. I need to drag the name of the region. The name is not readable now, but they are separated. And then do the analyze or spatial calculation. We need to count the shop ID and drag that to color. And that color, the darker color, means that there are more shops in this area, and the lighter color, fewer shops. And change the color to a more food-related color. Make it looks like a bubble tea. And also map layers, I like to turn off everything here. So that's the map. That's a simpler version of the viz I showed you earlier. And for that viz, I also added some information like the rail lines and rail stops. That's basically the same technique I use. Okay, so back to our keynotes. Just a second. Back to our keynote. Yeah. So the demonstrate, that's all for the demonstration. And let's wrap up a little bit. We have covered 3 types of geometry: points, lines, shapes. And we make use of the keyword search in Google Map. And also, it's very important to add a data table if you need to add extra column. Then in Tableau, we have used map layers and spatial join. So here is the homework if you are interested in it. As I've mentioned, I make use of the relationship and make some fake relationship in order to show different geometries in one map. So here you can see that one field is name, another field is the description. They are not related. There is no connection between that. So that's fake relationship. And the homework is how to create a real relationship. And I've got some hint for you is to make use of the data table in Google My Maps. Okay, so that's the end. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to share my knowledge with you. And if you have anything you want to share with me, or you have questions, or you have solutions for the homework, please feel free to connect with me on Twitter or drop me an email. And thanks for your time. Hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was great. There's a few questions. I don't know if we've got time to answer them at the moment live. So I might get you to jump on the Q&A at this stage.
Sure.
And maybe just answer those. I thought it was quite funny.
I will.
Yeah, that'd be great. I thought it was really fascinating. You hold the key to creating a real relationship. I think maybe that's a whole other topic, but look, if you can do it in Tableau.
Yeah.
And so just move on. We're going to have Fred now, who's in Sydney, Australia, and he's going to show us how to do radial chart in Tableau with which is referencing a very, very impactful viz that he did around Lebanon. So Fred is a BI specialist at JLL in Sydney, and is a Tableau featured author, and has many viz of the day awards as well. So I'm sure it's going to be very engaging and entertaining. So Fred, if you want to share your screen, and yeah, I will finally learn how to do a radial chart.
Thanks, Sam. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen. But I should have thought this through. I should have planned for an assignment just like Wendy did for everyone after the presentation. So maybe next time. So hopefully you can see my screen. Can you?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, okay. So thanks, Sam, for the intro. And before I start, I would like to take a second to thank the entire Analytics team and Tableau, especially you, Caroline, for giving me the opportunity to present in front of all of you today. It's really nice to be here. So, as Sam mentioned, my presentation today is all about radials, and it's titled How to Radial. And the goal of my presentation is to show you how I create radial charts and what are the customization parameters that are available, so you can include these fun charts in your next visualization project. All right, so just a little bit about me before I dive into the presentation. So as I mentioned, my name is Fred Najjar. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I have a background in data and statistical analysis, and I have been recently appointed as a Tableau public ambassador. I'm currently working at JLL as a BI lead. All right. So I'm super passionate about Tableau, and in my spare time, I like to experiment with different chart types and layouts while work on topics that are an interest to me. And I'm also passionate about design. So I always try to present these data or these topics in a visually appealing yet informative way. So if you look at my work on Tableau Public, you will notice that I like to use circular shapes, but you might even say that I overuse them sometimes. And that's because I don't get the chance to use them during my day-to-day job. Which brings me to my disclaimers. So the first disclaimer that we have is this chart is not for business use. So please use it carefully and always have your audience in mind when you are creating these charts. And number two, I'm not going to dive into the mathematics behind the calculations on how to create the radial chart or all of the trigonometry behind it. However, if you are interested in that, then I can recommend this session from TC19, which was by the awesome Ken and Kevin Flerlish, as they show or they go through the whole mathematics and everything about the chart. Alrighty, so back to our charts now. So with radial charts, they are very, very useful, and they are quite handy when you have two or more than two dimensions. And they become really good when you combine these two dimensions with other marks such as shapes, colors, size, and so on. So with the radial charts, you have two different axes. The first axis is the circular axis. And that's when you put, that's where you can put your continuous sort of dimension. And by continuous, I mean anything that you can come up with a logical sequence to. So that could be a year, or that could be an episode of a TV show, or that could be a, I don't know, a game in a football season or a football match. So that's the first dimension, or the first axis. And the second axis that we have here is the categorical axis. And with this axis, what you can represent in here are all of the sections, or if you put it in a better way, if I put it in a better way, any data points or any field in your data that's repeated across all of your sequence or all of your database or all of your data set. So for example, if you have a year, then that could be the month of the year. Or if you have a month, then that could be the day of the year. So the Saturdays, the Sundays, and so on. And even if it's a TV show, then if you have the season, if you have an episode on the continuous axis, then this would be the season. So that will be the first episode of season 1, season 2, season 3, and so on. So back to our example and the example that I want to show you today. So in this chart, we have two dimensions, two main dimensions, which are the year and the month of the year. So on the line axis, we have the months, so the Januaries, the Februaries, and so on. And along the circle axis, we have the year itself. The data points here are representing an event, and they are positioned by the corresponding year and number. And the color representing the most recent event, while the size is representing the impact of that event. So let's go to Tableau and look at the actual calculation. All right, so to create this chart, all we need is an X and a Y, and that's it. But to come up with these X and Y, you need those three calculations, and that's pretty much everything you need to create these charts. So you have an index, an angle, and a radius. Both index and angle are required for your circular axis, and the radius is required for your line axis, so whatever goes around the months in this example. So I'm going to start with the index calculation and talk about what's the purpose of this calculation and how we can customize it. And we're going to do the same thing with the rest of the calculations. So the index calculation is basically there to assign a number to each year starting with the most recent year. And that's what we have in this example. So what we're doing is we're looking at the maximum year in our data set, and we're subtracting the year number from there. So the outcome of this calculation is going to give us a number between 0 and the number of the last year that's available, or the earliest year available in our data set. And that would be, so 2020 is going to be number 0, 2019 is going to be number 1, and so on all the way until the last year. When you look at this calculation, there are two customizations that you can update for the first, or for the index. So the first one being the rotation. And the rotation says, instead of starting from number 0, start from another number. But what does that mean? Make this smaller and look at this parameter. So the offset index currently is set to 0. And that basically telling Tableau, or this calculation, is just use the number of the year to represent it along our X and Y. But if I start to slide this parameter, you can see that my all of my data points are shifting to the right, or I can shift them to the left. The point about this parameter that we can customize the radial chart to not necessarily start from this point. We can ask it to start from another point just by sliding this parameter. So we can say start from the bottom, that would be the most recent year, and go backwards. Or we can say start from the side, let's say, and from this side, and then go backward. So this will allow us to kind of navigate or position our data points in the way that we want. And the other customization option that we have for the index is the starting point. So currently we're asking Tableau to start from the max year, to subtract the max out of all of the years. But if we put the min year, so the first year, then Tableau will start to reorder our data and have the earliest year to start from the 00, and then work again anti-clockwise or clockwise based on what we tell it. But with this parameter, we're starting your index from the most recent year or the most available number in your sequence, and the last number of your sequence will basically change the way that your visualization will be positioned. So let's put this back to max and go to our chart. All right, so now we looked at the index and we looked at how we are assigning a number to each one of these data points. Then we move to the angle. And the angle is all about telling Tableau to assign an equal distance between each of our points, and then convert that distance into a degree, and then from a degree into a radians, because Tableau likes radians more than degrees. So what's happening here is we're getting the 360 degrees, and then we're dividing those degrees by the total number of years that we have available in our data set. So if we had 100 year, then that will be 3.6 degree per year. And then, I'm going to skip through this for a second, and then we are multiplying that degree by the index. So if you remember from our index calculation, we had the first year is assigned as number 0, the second year is assigned as number 1, so on and so forth. So the first year will be set up on 0 degree. The next year will be on 3.6 degree, and the year after will be on 7.2 degree, and so on and so forth, up until we reach the last year in our index. So with that in mind, we have two different customizations that we can apply to this chart. The first one is, instead of, if we want to kind of adjust the position of moving in our, the position of movement for our sequence or our continuous axis on the circular axis, what we can do is we can change it from going the most recent year and then going clockwise to the years before all the way back to the last year. We can make it go the other way around. We can make the most recent year and then going anti-clockwise to the previous years. So that will help you to kind of change or play with the aesthetic of the positioning for your data point and where you want to kind of place your radial chart on your dashboard. The second parameter, or the second thing that we can do here in terms of customizing, is the gap. So remember how we had our index and we were saying that divide the 360 by the number, equally by the number of years that we have available. But if we want to create sort of this gap, or if you want to create a gap, what we can do is, so by default, let me just go set this to 0. So by default, you will see that the radial chart will work as the most recent year, and then we said go anti-clockwise because we added the negative mark, all the way back to the latest, to the first year or the earliest year, which is the 1916. But you can see that there is no gap between these two. And here in my visualization, let me put back this to normal and change this back to 5. And this is completely customizable. So this is completely up to you based on your layout, on your visual sort of decision. But here, as you can see, the points from the latest year and the earliest year, there's this gap, and this is how we create this gap. Well, the beauty about this gap or this parameter can allow you to reshape your data or to reshape your graph while keeping equal distance between all of your data points. So here I just made it to be a half a circle. So if I want to make all of my data points to go just on a half a circle, and in conjunction with the offset index, I can go ahead and move it and rotate that. And I say it will go from the bottom to top. And probably if I want to have the current year or the max year to be here and the latest year to be there, all I have to do is just add that negative sign and it will flip, basically. So this will give you control over your chart and the way that you're presenting your data within the chart. So when you place the chart on your dashboard, you do have a sort of a logical order to kind of your visual design element of the dashboard. Okay, so these are the first two calculations, and then going to the third calculation, which is the radius. With our radius, the radius is for our second dimension, which is the line axis. And if you remember what we said, that on the line axis, we have all of the months, so the Januaries, the Februaries, and so on. So for this one, what we're using is just the month function, which will give us the month order within the year. So the January will be number 1, the February will be number 2, and so on and so forth, all the way till December, which is number 12. And here we have another customization option. So the last customization, and that will be the last customization option. So for this one, what we can do is we can use this parameter and say, so by default, if we don't do anything, this is what the chart will look like. But using this parameter, we can tell Tableau, well, instead of starting from number 1, start from number 2, or we can say number 3 or 4. And this is how I had it for this data, for this data set. But you can go ahead and increase it all the way to 1,000, 5,000, doesn't really matter. Tableau wouldn't complain. But what's really important here that you need to keep in mind that depending on the number of points or data points that you have on the line axis, the more that you stretch the points further away from the midpoint, which is the X, which is the 0, 0 point around the X and Y, the closer those points will come together. So what you can do, you can say, well, I want you to put an equal 10 degrees or 10 points distance between each of the months, and then increase that by 200, increase the radius by 200. And then you will start to see how they are visually different. Maybe we can try actually that. So we can say that times 10 and then with radius, and we can see how these will start to differ from each other. So the whole point here is, depending on how many data points and how many categories that you have, you can start to play with these parameters and play with the spacing to get your chart to fit perfectly on whatever point or whatever visual layout that you're trying to achieve. And that's the last calculation that you need to create a radial chart. Then you have the X and the Y. The X and the Y are basically just the radius times the sine of the angle, and the Y is the radius times the cos of the angle. So they are basically straightforward. They are required to create the positioning and to position those data points around circle. And finally, as I said, if you're interested to learn more about this chart, you can refer to Kevin and Kurt and Ken Flernish's presentation. And thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was amazing. I had to put my glasses on because I was like this. Like, I just want to play with those parameters. I don't know about anybody else, but it was really cool as well, the way that you made it. Oh God, it was like a semicircle, and then you flipped it, and you could space it out, and that was really cool. I think when you started talking, you go for it.
Sorry, what I was about to say is, if you look at a lot of visualizations on Tableau Public, you will see that all of these kind of, when you create a space for your visualization, you can use that sort of negative space to add another dimension or another graph. So having this sort of half a shaped circle or 3/4 of a circle, that would really help for whatever you want to final outcome to be.
Yeah, so it leaves you some space to put some context and some text, another visualization, or just make it a little bit more interesting and eye-catching. So that's so cool. That's amazing. Very cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. And hopefully you'll see Mark's face there. Mark, are you still awake? Have you had a cup of tea yet?
Right on cue. Look at that.
Oh, good.
I should turn it the other way around.
Oh, very nice. So I would like to introduce you to Mark, who is in London. So it's early morning, and thank you so much for getting up early, Mark. We do appreciate it here in Down Under. And so Mark is a big champion for Tableau certification. He is desktop certified professional, which is, I believe, it's a rare breed anyway, and it's going to get even rarer with the new certification. So like, number one, wow, that's amazing. Go you. And number two, you're a Tableau social ambassador as well. So must be very busy. So handing it over to you, you're going to talk about, I'm really fascinated to hear about what the Z layer sounds like, another dimension. So, and appreciating the order of priority. So take it away, Mark.
Thanks so much. Right. I'm going to try and share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Looks great.
Fab. Great. Well, thank you very much, Sam, and also Annabelle, for the opportunity to present with you guys. You've done a great job bringing so many speakers in these sessions in 2021. I hope I can live up to just a fraction of what they brought to the party this far. So yeah, my talk today is on what I'm calling the Zed Factor, and it probably complements the other two speakers quite well today, because while they're showing off some really cool, wow, I never knew Tableau could do that type moments, I'm going to be discussing a few why is Tableau doing that type moments that we all experience when we're navigating our way around the tools. So I'm going to begin with a few slides, but then I'll switch across the Tableau desktop, and the workshop that I'll share with you today, I've already posted onto Tableau Public, so you can go and explore the details for yourself later on if you'd like to. So I'll be around 5 minutes or so just discussing some concepts, and then spend most of the rest of the time in desktop. And at the end, I'll recap with a few links for further reading. So Sam already gave you a preview. This is my Tableau resume in a nutshell. I discovered Tableau around 5 years ago. It was a solution to a personal project that I had when I was blogging about sports data. And very quickly I got sucked in and decided that I should make a career choice out of data viz, after I read a blog by Neil Richards about his own career path. And as a tribute, you see in the picture there, the picture I'm wearing at what was TC18, contains one of his quizzes. As Sam mentioned, I'm very passionate about the opportunities that certification can provide, both for the individual and also for the employer. And myself, I hold the title of Tableau Desktop Certified Professional. And I'm currently serving my 3rd year as a social ambassador, which in my case means I spend quite a lot of time exchanging ideas about Tableau with people I've never met before. Today, my role means that I get to work with experts right across the data spectrum at a company here in the UK called CACI. And while I specialize in working with retail banking data, I also have the opportunity to work with colleagues across many of our other client projects. And I probably spend around 1/3 of my working day using a Tableau product, split across desktop, server, a bit of prep as well, and also the content migration tool. And very brief bit about CACI. So we're a data consultancy that works with leading businesses in just about every sector you can imagine, focusing on consumer insight and location. You get a sense here of the range of different companies we support with data solutions, primarily in the UK, but also to all corners of the globe. And that extends to things like retail shopping centres, supermarkets, media outlets, car manufacturers, and consumer packaged goods brands, and in many different sectors beyond that as well. And what we might do in support of these clients could include things like database hosting, email campaign management, customer segmentations, and helping brands to connect people in place. And as we all know, where there are data sets, there are opportunities to visualize. And in many cases, we build solutions for these clients using Tableau. But you won't find me giving presentations on dashboarding styles or novel chart types and hacks. I've developed areas of interest in the world of Tableau that play to my strengths. And I think it serves us all well to be aware of our own Tableau superpowers and to play up to them. It helps to build a better community that will support those who are just getting into the field of data viz, or perhaps discovering Tableau for the first time. These are the areas that I tend to have more to say about. And as it happens, 2 of them very neatly overlap with our 2 hosts today. So the content migration tool isn't talked about all that often, but is a fantastic application to help move data sources and workbooks around your Tableau server environments. And both Sam and I are enthusiastic champions for that tool. And then the picture on the right captures the first time that Annabelle and I met in person, almost exactly 2 years ago today.
Best
at
photo
TC19
ever.
in Vegas. Yeah. I mentioned brain dates a few slides ago, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to share how useful and fun these networking sessions can be with other Tableau users. So at TC21 next week, the Brain Dates experience is virtual, and there are already over 200 sessions that have been set up. Many of them are in APAC-friendly hours. So if you'd like to engage with other Tableau users, this is a great place to do so. And if there isn't a topic posted that you're interested in there, then start one. Myself, I'm going to be hosting 3 or 4 brain dates next week. 3 of them already set up. One of them specifically related to this talk. And I'll post a link at the end of the session if you'd like to join along. As we've already seen today, there are some amazing people out there who give fantastic talks and produce amazing Tableau public content. And it's important that they're out there pushing the limits of what's possible in Tableau. In my case, though, I do much more simple things. I like to focus on harnessing the core functionality of Tableau for the everyday user, the sorts of thing that 95% of us will use on a regular basis. But I also think it's also okay to not know how some of these things work. I know for the first 6 months that I used Tableau, I didn't really understand parameters properly. And there will be others out there who will benefit from having a light shone upon a slightly less well understood concept. So if you feel like you understand Tableau well, but occasionally have some of those, why is Tableau doing this type moments, then this presentation hopefully should be for you. So let's get on to the Zed Factor. And within the Zed Factor, to my mind, there are 2 types of functionality I'd like to explore. The first is this visual layer. And that's to say that Tableau is presenting to us in charts, depending upon the way that we've arranged the pills around the canvas and how they're sorted. And we'll look at a couple of examples of those. And the second comes in formatting. And I think this is a hugely unaddressed area in Tableau. If anyone wants to do a presentation about formatting in the future at an analytics tag, I'm sure the guys would love to have you host it. Often people just assume that we all know how formatting works, but really it can be very complex depending upon what settings you've applied and where. In both cases, I think the functionality that we're concerned with is how Tableau prioritizes the various elements in the view and decides how to serve it to us. And these are things that we as the Tableau desktop user have control over, but sometimes don't fully understand how what we've done changes things. And in both cases, there's a relatively simple process that Tableau is going through in order to decide what to display. And I'm going to walk through some examples of each of them. So to coin a phrase, let's look at some specific examples of these and how Tableau is handling them and how we can master them. So can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the Tableau desktop? Great. I've shared correctly. So I'm going to begin with this line chart, which is showing one line for each of 12 US states. And each line here depicts for that state how its sales were distributed over time. So we've got cumulative frequency on the vertical axis and time running along the bottom here. And you've probably seen or heard some excellent advice out there about adding focus to charts to draw the user's attention to a category of interest. So let's say that I want to focus on just one state. So here I've selected Washington. It's my favorite US state to visit. There's also the state where Tableau's head office is located. And to draw the focus, I've set all the other lines to gray and the line of interest, the state of interest, Washington, to this teal color. Now, the trouble we have here is that for quite a bit of the time, if you try and trace the blue line, it's masked by the other states. It's stuck behind them. And this illustrates very well the Z order. The Tableau is layering one line on top of another, like placing lots of strands of spaghetti down one by one, but only ever laying the next one on top of the previous ones. And Tableau is applying a rule to decide which order to lay them in. And in this case, the states are listed alphabetically. They're from A to Z with A on top and Z at the bottom. And since Washington is at the end of that list, it appears beneath all the other lines. Now, at the moment, the sort order follows the default for this field. But I can overrule this by setting a new sort order. I can just drag Washington here, further up the chain. And that's a very quick way for me to achieve this effect. And now it sits above all the other lines. This technique would work very well with just that state field if we're working with, say, a static chart that perhaps we're going to export into an email or a document or a presentation. But it's less useful if we want to invite our audience to interact with the viz, because we don't want to force them to have to keep moving categories around in the legend. The great news is that this applies just the same with Boolean fields as well as categorical ones. So in this case, I've used a parameter to allow the user to select the state that they're interested in. And by ensuring that the true result appears first, it will bring my focus line to the top. And as a change between the different states, the blue line for the selected state will always appear on top. And we don't get this masking effect with lots of gray sitting on top of it. Now, at this point, I want to draw your attention to what's happening on the marks card, this area to the side. So I've got two dimensions on the marks card now. One is called state, and that's disaggregating our data and showing a line for each state. And the other one is my Boolean field that's determining the color that's set according to the parameter. The order of these two pills might not seem important first, but it's the difference between me mastering Tableau and me asking, why is Tableau doing that? And I'll explain why. And it comes down to the Z order, which is the order in which the lines are being placed on the chart. It's being calculated pill by pill, which means that if I place the state field first, then Tableau is going to order the lines by state alphabetically again. And then for each state, apply a color according to the Boolean calculation to see whether or not it matches the parameter. And as a result, now my line is masked again by the others. I remember exactly when I learned how this worked, and it was almost by accident. I've probably been using Tableau for around 2 years at this point. I published a version of this dashboard to Tableau Public after I saw somebody share a data set of all the coup d'etat over the last 60 years. So the chart on the left is a small multiple chart with a row for each decade so that I could group each of the data points from each year together. And if I open this up a bit, you can see how it's been structured. So we have dimension pills in the columns and rows at the top here to generate a cluster for each year. And on the marks card to the left, just in the previous example, I've got pills that do aggregation slightly differently. I've got a pill showing the date for each coup attempt, and then a pill on color to denote whether or not the attempt was successful. But initially, I had my pills ordered differently. And if the color pill was placed first, then it would have ordered the marks in each cluster differently, as we see here. And if it's applying the Z order by color and then by date, it will group all the marks by the dimension that's on color, in this case, successful or unsuccessful, and then sort them by date within those color groups. And this goes for other chart types too, like maps and scatter plots. So here I've used the EU Superstore dataset to produce a plot with 127 circle marks that compare the profit ratio and the average date to dispatch and order in the various provinces of Europe. And each circle here is sized according to the total sales in that province. If we look at the marks card, we can see that we've got a disaggregation by province to get our 127 circles. And then the color is then being applied by region. So there are two sorts going on here. The provinces are ordered alphabetically, and the regions are ordered north, then central, and then south, which we can see from the color legend below. Now, ordinarily, these would be ordered alphabetically, but I've changed the default ordering here, which is why you don't see the sort indicator on the region pill. But I'm going to zoom into the area where most of the action is, and I'm particularly interested in this area here, where we've got some overlapping circles. And the Z order in Tableau is deciding that one of the blue circles, this one here, should sit above the large yellow one. But then there's another blue circle sat beneath the large yellow one, just there. And that's because we're applying the Z order by province first. So irrespective of the color for region, the B for Baden-Württemberg comes before the E for England, which comes before the N for North Rhine-Westphalia. So now let's think about what would happen if I changed the order of the pills. If region was listed first, then it would sort the regions first, and specifically in the order that's shown in the color legend. So we would expect to see the yellow circle sitting on top of the smaller blue one if we did that. And that should be exactly what happens. If I move regions to the top, then that smaller blue circle is sat behind the yellow one. But then just as we did earlier, I could manually resort the regions if I wanted to always place the central provinces on top of the northern ones. We can achieve that like this. And now we get this effect where the two central regions both sat on top of the northern region. So to recap, Tableau is going to apply Z order first according to the first listed pill and its sort order. And then if there are marks with the same property in the first listed pill, then it will apply the Z order from the second listed pill and so on. So those are only three examples, but I think you get a decent appreciation of the visual layering effect that Tableau is applying. The second type I want to explore is around formatting. So let's begin here. I've got a dashboard with two KPIs showing. Actually, it's just one KPI. Format is slightly different. If I bounce between the two sheets in this dashboard here, you see that I've got sum of sales on text, nothing else going on. And in my blue sheet, sum of sales again, with nothing else going on. The value is the same in both these cases. The sum of sales is just around 2.3 million. But in the blue view, I've applied a change to the format of the number. Let's have a look at where that's applied. That is in the pane formatting. And we can see that pane formatting has been applied because the line here for numbers is marked in bold. And if I go back to the other sheet, we can see that there's no equivalent that's been changed here. So I'm using automatic number formatting here. But if I go back to the data source, I can apply a new default format. That's to say that originally I've got the automatic format on that Tableau selected based upon the field that I'm using, but I can tell it to act differently by default. So for example, I could say default properties number format and decide that I wanted to display the currency in Australian dollars. So I could change my pound symbol to a dollar, put a nice Oz suffix on there, and we've changed the default number format. But even when I do that, you'll see that when I go back to the dashboard, the format of the blue view, where I'd set the format in the pane, has overruled the default. This diagram illustrates roughly what's going on here. If we've set the formatting of the number in the pill, then Tableau will use this to display the number to us. But if we haven't, then it will revert to any default that we've customized, just as we did when we set it to the Australian dollars. And if we haven't set a default in the workbook, then it will revert to the automatic formatting that Tableau associates with this measure based upon what it saw when we first brought the data source into the workbook. So in my example, I've used a number that I formatted to be a currency, but this also works with things like percentages as well. And the same applies when we look at text formatting, albeit with an additional layer of complexity. And that complexity comes because I can set the format of the text in more places and in more ways. Its color, its font, its size, as well as its alignment in the viz. And all four of those things can be set in the marks card text options. To complicate matters further, we've also got to consider that the formatting defaults can be applied at workbook level and dashboard level as well. But again, this diagram illustrates the basic principle. Any one font or alignment element that is set in the marks card will take precedent. And if Tableau doesn't find any setting there, or move on to see whether any defaults have been set for the pane. And if it doesn't find any there, then it will continue to cascade through the workbook level defaults until it finally settles on something like the Tableau book font style. So in the following few tabs, I'm going to walk through some examples of this step by step. And I'm not going to cover all the possibilities because I'll be here forever, but you get a sense for what's going on. So I've taken the word technology as my text, taken by the category that I've selected to put in the view. And that's I've only applied the category filter to show the word technology. And as we build through, we'll gradually apply some changes. So in this first view, I've applied no formatting changes in the viz, but I have got a default set at the workbook level. So if I go to format workbook, we see that the font I'm applying is Benton Sands book. And as I move on to the next tab, you'll see that we've got some color applied. And if I format the pill and crucially select the pane, which is where the formatting has been applied, you see that I've colored this in red. I selected the red to change the color of the text. So that will override anything that's set as the default for the dashboard. But I could also set the color in the marks card. So we see that I've still got the red formatting set in the pane, but if I have a look at the text element here, I've set this to blue, and that will override anything that I've set at pane level. And then moving on to another layer of complexity, I could say change the font style in the pane, but leave the version that's in the marks card unchanged. So this is still trying to adopt the default, but because I've set a new rule at pane level, it's adopted that for the font. And then I could play around with the alignment, say, I could set the alignment in the pane to the right, even though I've not changed anything in the marks card, and that will shift everything to the right by default. But then I could overrule that within the marks card to say, I want my text to appear at the bottom center. So even though I said I want some red text in the pane and that my alignment should be to the right, because I've set different rules in my marks card, those will take precedent. And this very crudely summarizes those 6 steps we just walked through. You get a sense of how many different places we need to consider when managing formatting. And when it comes to things like inheriting a workbook from a colleague, say, this is the sort of thing that can sometimes drive us nuts when we're trying to diagnose how a workbook's been formatted. So to recap very briefly, when Tableau is processing multiple items in the marked card to determine what order to layer marks in, it will begin with the sort order for the first listed pill. And then if any of the marks share the same property, then Tableau will look to the second listed pill and review the sort order there, and so on. With number formatting, Tableau will first check whether we've applied any formats in the pane. And if it finds some, then it will use those. Otherwise, it will move down in sequence until it finds a number format to use, eventually settling on the default that's in the data source. And with text formatting, each element of the text format can be traced through this sequence separately. We can set the font size in the marks card, the font color in the pane, and the font face in the workbook default. So as long as the same element hasn't also been set higher up in this process, Tableau will apply them to all of our text. So I think I'm doing good for time, but before I overstay my welcome, I want to make sure I've given due credit to a fine resource that I lent on to research this topic more thoroughly, which was this blog post by Jeffrey Schaefer. He goes into the scatterplot example in much more detail, and I thoroughly recommend checking that out. If you'd like to, you can find the workbook that I just walked through from desktop, already posted in Tableau Public. You can use the QR code to the right there. And if you really do find this interesting and would like to discuss the topic anymore, in exactly 1 week, I'm going to host a brain date where we can all meet up and discuss this and similar features in Tableau. There are other things that are related, other ways that priority is applied as well. And before I move on to my final slide, I'm just going to leave that on for a few seconds in case you want to take anything down. It would be remiss of me not to give a shout out to the Data Book Club, which meets every quarter to discuss a new book and is open to anyone who's interested. We meet virtually with participants from all over the world. It's totally free. If you'd like to find out more, it would be you can find a link there and subscribe to receive updates. Other than that, thanks very much for hanging around to listen. It's greatly appreciated. I know the time's dragging on wherever you are. I appreciate taking up some of your time.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was amazing. I think for me, I had so many aha moments of I normally just click, 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 click. Why is it doing that? Why is it not right aligning? Why is it blue? Why is it? I generally find it, but after a lot of frustration. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to have to take a deep breath and just come back to those principles.
And so often there is a logic and a rule out there to follow, but we just haven't, it's not been socialized to us.
That's right.
Hopefully this will sort of reinforce some of those sorts of things that are out there.
And remove frustration, because I don't know about you, but I definitely inherit workbooks, but sometimes I inherit workbooks and I can't understand them and they're from a past Sam. So I actually did it, but like 6 months ago or 18 months ago, and I'm like, okay, now I can find out. So yeah, I definitely am going to have a look at some of those brain dates as well. I will just share my screen again, which is a great segue to just quickly talk about the Tableau conference, which is coming up next week. So obviously this is an APAC time zone that we're running here, and Tableau conference is run over 3 different time zones. So Americas, Europe, and Asia Pac. For us here in Asia Pac, it'll be Wednesday through Friday, I think. So 9 to 3 p.m. Singapore time. So yeah, hopefully that'll suit most people in our time zone. And I really encourage you to register and put a schedule together, join a brain date, and yeah, just, definitely plan your schedule as well. Maybe around your meetings that you have or whatever, but it's really very much so yeah, so much value. So a couple of the must-see sessions that have been, I sort of put a call out for some recommendations. So Tableau Speed Tips is always one of the fantastic sessions. And I think we have 3 powerful women that are going to be running at this time, which is awesome. We've got Tableau drill downs. I think that's Tableau Tim. Make it better, tips for better dashboards. I think that's the Fleurlish twins. And then, 2021 devs on stage is just always really, really cool. I got the chance to go to the Tableau conference in Las Vegas in 2019, I think it was. And just, the atmosphere was so cool. It's so fun. So, hopefully they can capture that again, even virtually. And then, of course, the 2021 Iron Viz. So that'll be really fantastic to watch that as well. If you want to present, please just contact us, myself, Sadal, Annabelle, or use the QR code to apply to present, especially if you're in APAC. Now that you don't have to present at 3 o'clock in the morning your time. So, I mean, you might be a night owl, but that's fine. So yeah, please just, have a chat with us, and we're going to start booking in 2022 sessions. So that's all going to be locked in pretty soon. So put your hand up. We would love to hear from you. It doesn't matter whether it's beginner, intermediate, advanced level, or a mix of all of them. Just again, has to be Tableau desktop, web authoring, or Ask Artists. It's just really around that analytical part of it. And the last one, maybe I'll hand over to Annabelle. Do you want to, because you'll be running this with Sadal next month?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the next session will be the 1st of December. It will be more friendly for Europe and US. I'm sorry, guys, but you can still register or watch a recording afterward. You cannot sleep like me sometimes. You wake up very early. You can watch a recording. You can watch it live. We will have awesome speaker. We will have Andy Codgreave. We will have Donabel Santos, and we will have Alexander Mu. So a great lineup again. And otherwise, we will see each other in 2022.
And thank you everybody for attending this. As Annabelle said, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube, and we will send out the links for that, because I, for one, will be going back through those sessions and following them. All right, thanks everybody.